to the Creating a Global Innovation Culture session, a part of our Global Innovation Readiness webinar series. And we look forward to a very exciting session with our guest speaker, Dr. Elvire Meier-Comte, Vice President and Head of Human Resources at Airbus, who will give us insights on her journey and wonderful experience in innovation culture. And I am also pleased to present my co-host, Finn Majlergaard, Global Leadership and Change Leader here at Global Network, who will also share his insights and extensive experience in building successful organizational cultures. So I'm going to give a quick intro. I'm Karina Jensen, founder and executive director of Global Minds Network. And I'd like to just give you an intro and overview on our series and then we'll get started. So this Global Innovation Readiness webinar series, why, you might ask, why should we have one now? And we here at Global Minds Network feel it's really timely in today's changing world to take a closer look at how can you better innovate and collaborate in a world that's increasingly, it's global, it's interdependent, it's multicultural, and it's digitally connected. And so we have, we started the series on May 21st, and this is our 5th session. We have one more to go, and we've taken the full journey from a leadership to virtual teams to now taking a look at innovation culture. And so we're here one more Thursday next week. You can join us as well. And again, at the same time, starting 8:30 in San Francisco over to usually 5:30 here in Europe, and then 21 hours in Bangalore. And so some tips for the readiness journey. By now, I think many of you are familiar with the Zoom webinar. And so they're really the key tools that you want to use during this session are the Q&A for questions that you have, a chat for any comments, discussion, feedback. And I had already tested the sound a bit, so I asked some of you to say hello. I'm going to, I see there are more who have arrived, so I'm just going to ask for one more shout out. I say bonjour from Paris and from Paris. I'm going to see who's out there. Just make sure that you can hear me loud and clear. Yes, great. Okay. There's still many, many voices and hellos and greetings from the US, from Europe, as well as from Asia. Yes, so keep in mind, Zoom webinars are a bit different, so you will be muted during the session. When the presentations are over, we should be ending around 1:45, and then we'll open up for Q&A. So you should be able to unmute at that point, and you can also text in your questions in the Q&A feature. And a little bit about us, a quick intro, Global Minds Network. Our vision is to inspire global minds to collaborate and innovate in order to transform the world, make a positive impact. And we're doing so through training, auditing, research, facilitation, advisory services in order to help leaders and teams facilitate global innovation and multicultural collaboration, and really to accelerate organizational performance and international market success. And our team is really an international advisory network of the global minds. So we're change makers, innovators, international leaders who bring expertise at the intersection of global innovation, leadership, multicultural collaboration, and digital transformation. And we embrace the framework around global innovation readiness, especially for this series. We've been looking at the success levers of vision, dialogue, and space. And so looking at the global innovation cycle as a continuous journey in this project and team-driven world, and looking at how the levers of vision, global and compelling vision with inclusive leadership and strategic co-creation can help inspire that journey. And that in turn shapes the dialogue for teams in order to facilitate collaboration through knowledge sharing and cross-cultural learning. And that in turn shapes the space, how to build a global innovation culture and inspire creative team climate. And so this is where we are today for this session, is taking a closer look at how to shape a global innovation culture, especially for an environment that is highly international, multicultural, and digitally connected in today's changing world. And what I found through my research and through our combined expertise at Global Minds Network is looking at 3 values that shape that global innovation culture. So this is research from over the past decade, looking at multinational organizations and global leaders who are responsible for innovation initiatives, as well as cross-cultural and cross-functional teams. And what was very interesting is that the success or the values that really demonstrated successful global innovation cultures were around cultural empathy, how an organization could ensure that their global teams were culturally diverse, but that they also ensured that there was attention to those local markets and for teams around the world, that their voices were heard and that they could share their local thoughts and practices as well as their ideas. Another value is creativity. So how does an organization nurture that creativity and allow time for teams in any part of the world to develop innovative thinking, as well as have moments for ideation and team co-creation. And that leads to the final value of collaboration, how organizations demonstrate an environment that's transparent and open, where teams feel safe to exchange and share ideas, and that knowledge sharing is continuously promoted. And that leads us to a closer look at team climate. That in turn creates a team climate that is responsive, transparent, nurtures an entrepreneurial spirit, and leads to high performance and execution success. And so here to give us really deeper insights on how to innovate a culture that no one can copy is my colleague, Dr. Finn Majlergaard, who is a global leadership and change leader at Global Minds Network. He is also the founder and CEO of Google and brings extensive experience having led cultural change and cross-cultural training with hundreds of leaders in numerous organizations. So we look forward to hearing his insights. And I'm going to open up the camera so you can meet Finn here. And welcome, Finn.
Thank you very much. And it's a pleasure to be here. And it's also a pleasure to see some familiar names among the participants. So thank you for joining. I'm going to spend around 15 minutes talking about a few things around innovation. And I'm trying to answer 3 questions. Why? First, why do innovation projects usually fail? Because they do. And secondly, what can we do to innovate things that no one can copy? Because as it is today, the innovation speed is so high, and when we focus on innovating products, everyone else will copy it in no time. So how can we innovate something that no one else can copy? And the third question I'm trying to answer within these 15 minutes is, how do we do it? Well, as I said before, usually we have, when we're talking about innovation, we talk about innovating products, but there's so much more to it. And what I'm going to focus on, and what I and my team have been working with companies all over the world for the past nearly 20 years, is how can we innovate corporate cultures? And corporate cultures, winning corporate cultures, are really the key to long-term sustainable success, because anyone can copy your product. No matter what product you're making, anyone can copy it, but no one can copy your culture. So that is really important to focus on creating a winning corporate culture. So broaden the perspective about what we can innovate, from products to a lot of other things, including cultures, but also your configuration, your offering, and the experience that your clients and employees have. All these aspects should be in the pool of things that you can innovate. Today, I will focus on corporate culture innovation, how we can innovate winning corporate cultures. So first, I would like to share my definition of innovation with you, which is a kind of a hallmark for me and what we're trying to impose to our clients and talk with our clients about, namely that innovation is creativity plus purpose. And when we're looking across the board for all the companies that we've been working with over the years and all the executives I've been working with at HEC, Executive Education in Paris, it is that we are so much focused on innovation and so much focused on creativity that we often forget the purpose. But the purpose is actually the key driver for successful innovation. Just think about prisoners. When they're trying to escape from a prison, they have a very, very clear purpose. I want to get out of here. And that strong, very well-defined purpose is actually what fosters creativity, what fosters the power behind the innovation so that they eventually succeed escaping from even high secure prisons. We need to have the same kind of clear purpose when we're talking about innovation in companies and when we are innovating our culture. What do we want with our culture? What do we want? What kind of company do we want? And that is very, very important. So what are the benefits of having a winning corporate culture? And why should we innovate it? Why should we do anything about it at all? Because whether you do a lot or nothing, you have a culture, but you might not have the culture that you would like to have. So the advantages of spending time and energy into creating a winning corporate culture, innovating new ways of creating that culture that is really outstanding, is that when you have a winning culture, your customers will be willing to pay more for your products or services because they want to be a part of the great thing that you have. When you buy an Apple iPhone or any other Apple product, you're not just buying the product, you're buying a part of the thing that everything that Apple stands for. That's why you're willing to pay a lot more for an Apple product, an Apple phone, than you are for an Android phone, because it just don't have the same feeling and experience around it as an Apple iPhone has. A lot of companies are able to create that experience because they have a winning corporate culture. So when you have a winning corporate culture, your clients are willing to pay more. And from a CFO perspective, another advantage of having a winning corporate culture is that your employees are willing to work for less. They will queue up outside your company because they want to be a part of the experience, a part of the culture that you have. So the gap between what you can sell your products for and what you have to pay your employees is much bigger. So it will actually show up on the bottom line when you invest time and money in creating a winning corporate culture. So how do you do that actually? How do you create that winning corporate culture? Because it sounds quite easy. We just have to create a culture. And let me say, you don't create it by having nice words in a PowerPoint presentation or on a website about your values. Most of the values that I have seen in PowerPoint presentation and on websites, they are, excuse my French, bullshit, because they are not founded in what are the real values in the organization. When we saw Dyson coming up with a new ventilator in 10 days during the coronavirus crisis, that is a sign of that they have a really strong winning culture, because another sign of a winning corporate culture is that they're able to change very fast. Dyson obviously has that. Otherwise, they would not be able to do what they did in so short time. But the rest of us who are not so fortunate to have that ability, what we have to do is that first we have to make a cultural due diligence where we find out what is the real culture of our organization. And when we have done that cultural due diligence, we will also be able to outline our cultural DNA. What are the real values in our company? What are the ways that we do things? What are the things that we take for granted? What are our aspirations, our dreams? How do we judge people inside or outside of the organization? All that kind of things. And when we have the culture DNA, then we can look at the DNA and say, which of these elements in the cultural DNA do we believe that we can create the most potential in? And it might not be in the product. It might be in the way that you deliver your product. It might be in the way that you motivate the people around you. It might be in the way that you distribute your product. It might be in the way that you do a lot of other things around your product and the way that you organize yourself, including your supply chain. So then we can start adopting a cyclic creativity process around these DNA elements that we find are most valuable to us and test them out. We will never succeed the first time, but by breaking it down into all these elements of the DNA, the cultural DNA, and start working with them and try out new things in small areas and find out what works, what doesn't work, and bring the diversity together in the organization. Everyone in the organization, everyone in the value chain has to be included in the creativity process that will lead to successful innovation. When you do that, you have a really opportunity to stand out from the crowd and create something that no one else can copy. Just look at the supply chains that Amazon has created, supply chains that Alibaba and others have created. They're so difficult to replicate, but everyone can set up a web shop, but no one can deliver from day to day. So that is one of the key things that are very, very important. So my final advice when it comes to innovation is that you should look much broader than just when it comes to the product. Your corporate culture is actually the key to your long-term success, both in terms of making your clients pay more for your products and make your employees work for less and improve your employee satisfaction a lot, because employees don't leave your company because they get too low salary. They leave your company because it's not a nice place to be for a lot of different reasons, usually bad leadership, bad organization, bad opportunities, lack of opportunities. So when you create that great culture and invest in that, then you can really increase the gap between what you earn and what you pay. And my second advice, final advice here, is that it's a good idea to have someone from outside to facilitate that cultural change process, that cultural innovation process. I'm not saying that just because we want you to hire us. I'm saying it because it actually makes sense, because when you have someone from outside to actually do that for you, people from outside have a different focus. They bring in different experiences, and we are not culturally blinded by the reality that you are already in. So coming in with the new perspectives, coming in with the new ideas, and pushing you further than you would ever be able to push yourself. That are some of the biggest advantages of hiring someone from outside to take you through that process of creating that fantastic corporate culture that the rest of the world will admire. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Finn, for those great insights. And that leaves us to our next speaker that I have a great pleasure to introduce, Dr. Elvire Meier-Comte, whom I had the pleasure of meeting several years ago when we were pursuing our PhD studies around cross-cultural innovation and collaboration. And I was very impressed with her research back then around emerging markets and how to improve these collaborations. And I have followed her impressive career path and have been delighted to see how she has developed new innovative models and cultures at Siemens, and then brought those inspirations to Airbus, where today she is vice president and head of human resources, where she's responsible for shaping that culture and developing this engaging and inspirational way forward for leaders and teams. And I know that she's going to share those insights with you now on her journey. And so I'd like to welcome Dr. Elvire Meier-Comte and she will be presenting to you. We're going to just, let's see, we're going to move over to presentation mode there. There we go. Okay, Elvire.
So thank you very much, Karina, for this very nice introduction. I think it's easier if you just say Elvire to me, just to make the exchange. I really appreciate that you use my full name, but I think let's keep Elvire, and I feel also very well with that. So I'm very happy. What did you say?
I said we'll move to Elvire now.
Okay. Thank you so much. So I'm very happy to be here together with you today and to share with you my professional experience and also a deep interest and passion in bringing transformation in global organization and looking not only at the innovation and technological perspective that we may have in as a driver of change, but also the human perspective and the humanity and the leadership aspect of any transformation. So if you go to the next slide. So what I would like to share with you is also based on my professional experience, and here you can see it very well, moving from seeing and considering the organization with a very rational view, and that compared to the more organistic view of the organization. And people or leaders tend to consider the organization as on the left side with the boxes, where when you have a transformation, you move the box and then it should work. Or you buy some technology or you buy new companies and then it's a mix and something should happen. The reality, as you know, in this community is that the organization is a living organism, is a complex structure of a sum of humans with a history, with different experiences, with traumatism that they may have also due to the different business experience. And this is this aspect that I've considered in my work, in my research, and in all the projects I have driven. I have for a long time driven project more on the left side, being part of the innovation management and strategy at Siemens, and then finally finding out that if you really want to drive a transformation, a sustainable one, having a deep effect, you have to go to the right side and look at the human factor. If you go to the next, Karina. So, and in the so-called VUCA world, I mean, you address the topic how to create a culture of innovation in a fast-changing world. The key question regarding the leaders in this organization is what are the capability and mindsets do they need for this future world? And actually, nobody really know. It's like a crystal ball. But what is very clear and what we know is that we need people who will be able to adapt to these different environments. I used to show for a long time the digital person, the robotization, which were the usual. And last year, what happened? Suddenly, we had the Friday for Futures, this movement to create a more sustainable world coming from the young people, having an influence now on how we are also driving a large company. And of course, for sure, the last months also with the coronavirus, how do we deal in this kind of situation of change, and how do we tape the innovation power of a company in this kind of situation? So, but not only looking at the leader, yeah, if you go to the next, Karina, not only looking at the leader, looking at all employees. And here I would like to take the example of one of our employees. Her name is Claire, and I would like to drive you through her journey in a world which is not really predictable. So if you go to the next, Karina, you can see, to the next slide, you can see where is Claire working today. So what she thinks, actually Claire is thinking that she's working in an analog world, in a big organization, She has a function, she has a boss, and then she has a boss of the boss, a boss of the boss, and a CEO. The reality of Claire is much more complex, because actually Claire is living from the organistic perspective in a quite complex environment. She's connected to other departments, she's connected to other networks outside of the organization, she's connected to her friends, to her family, to any other companies and colleagues where she has worked in the past. So this is the reality of the world of Claire's. And if you go to the next slide, Carina, then you can see what will happen, what is happening when the speed of the change is increasing in Claire's world. Actually, connectivity, uncertainty are growing, and the real world is becoming really difficult to frame for her. So this is actually quite difficult for her to find her way in this world which is changing and where everything has exponentially changed. And in that world, what is important for her is to know where is her North Star. So what are her values? For what does she stand? What is important for her in her life? And this is leading exactly to this overview, Karina, where you can see actually it's important for her to know what is good or what is bad, what is right or what is wrong. And for that, it's about really looking deeply about why she's behaving like that, what are her values, what are the values of the company where she is working, and is there really a match between her own values and the values that has been aggregated at a company level, where Finn were mentioning that sometimes people do not recognize themselves with the overall aggregated value. So, and then to ask yourself, okay, what is my direction? What is important for me? What do I want to drive in my life? And this is what we call the North Star. So if you go to the next, Karina, and actually beyond the value, the most important for us is that Claire has the ability to know what is her passion, where is really her deepest energy, where can she find really her best, and where can she have the so-called peak experience. And we are supporting, in this journey, supporting our employees to find out their passion, to know who they are, to know their values, to know their North Star, but the most important for them to know where can they find this topic, where they can really feel an incredible energy and engage themselves. And of course, if you propose to your employees to work on how to find their passion, then we ask also them to see, is there a match with the Airbus strategic priorities regarding the topic that you have identified as your passion. And what we then do, and you will see that on the next slide, is that we have developed an environment beyond the classical and hierarchical environments. We have created communities. So community has given as platforms for every employees in the companies, where they can define a project based on their own passion, and then ask other people to join them, and then they get the support of the top management. Of course, we see, as I said, that there is some match with the strategic priorities, but it can go in all directions. It can be HR topic, it can be technological topic, it can be sales topic. But the most important is that the people come together and start to be aware about their passion, to be aware about their values, and then to have this exchange with others to grow together. So the community is not only where they can share something and develop a project and get the top management support, but also where they can grow personally, because as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, it's also about creating the leaders we need also for in this unpredictable world. So it's a development journey, and it's also a journey where they can do some things really great with other peoples and create a new energy. And what we do is that once they have created these communities, they get a sponsor from the top management if they need any funding. And then we connect all this community in a so-called Airbus Transformation Valley. So it's like a Silicon Valley. That means there are some communities popping up. They drive a project, it may be successful or not, and then otherwise are coming. So it's really a living organism. We do not interact too much. This is the principle of this overall. I've just seen there is a question if the employees can use 100% of their time. No, this is something that they are doing in beyond the working time. If the project has really a strong impact and a strategic relevance, we had 2 cases of that, then it can become a real new department. It can be integrated in a real new department in the organization, and then they can really invest 100% of their time. We also had one case where we had one committee where they needed really more than the time beyond their jobs. And here we had organized, as HR, as a human resource, we had asked the manager to give the employees 25% to 30% of their time to work, to continue to work, because we really had a benefit from the community. So here you can see on this overview the principle, not only on driving a project, but also on developing as a human being. So we have worked here very strongly on the first level of these circles, on the self-awareness and relationship awareness, to really be conscious about who they are and how they are perceived also by others, so that they get also the energy and the feedback from others to grow as a person. Then they are learning also on how to connect and develop, to develop a so-called system awareness, meaning that they really understand to these activities, if they want to bring the change, if they want to implement their passion in their project, they need to understand the rule of the game in a large organization, which is the system understanding and system awareness. And here we support them so that they get this big picture, and that not only for Airbus, but also for the outside world, that they think bigger. And the bigger they think, and the better they also accept that the change that they want to bring may take some time, and that there are other examples of other change agents within the company or outside of company, that there are other persons with whom they could connect, who have a similar passion, a similar drive, a similar energy. And our experience is really that this other connection and this big picture view help them a lot to continue to drive their project. So on the next slide. On the next slide, you see another example of community which has just popped up in the company the last weeks. I've just inserted this example for you to see that this is a very dynamic process. So we have the new challenge of the COVID situation. So new communities has been created on the production area in the operation, where I'm currently active as a head of HR. And here they are giving a lot of new ideas on how to deal with the situation, giving us a lot of feedback and very valuable information. And we have decided to connect all these different new communities on sites, focus on how to see the positive part of the COVID situation and how to continue the business journey. And all these RD are then shared with the top management of operations Airbus Defence and Space. Here you can see Barbara Bergmeier, who is a very value-oriented leader, really supporting a lot this kind of community approach. And here you have also to know the community, there is a full inclusion approach regarding the community. So there is no limit of age, gender, position you may have in the company. It's really open to everybody, independently from your grading, your position, and your time of experience in the company. On the next slide, you will see how we are pushing all these different communities, not only to engage, but also to work on their self-awareness. So on the left side, you see the engagement level. So here there are different activities. Some of them are very focused on innovation. The Drink Big was it was a project that we have driven together with Google University. The Blue Box is very technological oriented. Shake and Shape, it's really the very young professional. Award of Excellence, these are also more technical ideas. And what we try to do is that as soon as the community are there, we are organizing for them a coach. So either we coach themselves with the internal coach we have, or we organize external coach so that they can have a self-awareness journey as a community. And here, the Passion for Growth is really the example where we also could find the funding to organize really professional coach to support them in their self-awareness journey. Otherwise, in the company, of course, even if you're not part of the community, we have a lot of tools which can enable you to work on your self-awareness, and we promote, of course, these tools for the community, even if they do not have straight from the beginning funding to have a coach supporting them. So, and then on the next slide. So here, this is the principle, I will say, of the approach, and which is psychologically proven, I will say, or psychologically based, that we said if we have to address really the change with serenity and courage, you need to look a lot on yourself, on your self-concept, your self-esteem. You need to have your self-concept also in relationship to others, to be really challenged or to be confirmed. And then you need this safe environment, this ecosystem for a possible identity shift in giving you this safety so that you can develop as a human being, continue to drive your passion, and be even stronger as a change agent. So on the next slide. And here, this was really after, this is a journey that I have pushed very much at Siemens when I was working in the innovation management. There you have to know that I started myself to develop communities. So I was not VP at Siemens. I was a normal employee, a manager. And this is where I could I found my passion through other people's in building community. And we found in the coach who could really support us to develop. And then we connected to each other. So what I did is that from the bottom, I could really create like a first movement within Siemens. And actually, it was good, but what I found out is that even if you have created a movement, even if I could move more than 5,000 people in different communities within Siemens, I was not in the position of being able to really change the structure of the organization, because transforming an organization is not only from the bottom, you need also top down to have the possibility to have the impact to also change the structure and make also all these coming changes accepted. And this was for me one of the motivations to grow also in my career to a position where I could have this impact. So now being VP within Airbus, I had the possibility to support this community in a very different way. And the most important is that once they are there, once they are connected, is that they are then also connected to the top of the organization. And what we have done is that through the sponsoring, because we have asked each of the community to find out a sponsor, and the sponsor was funding the coaching and training, the development beyond the project. The sponsor was also interested in the project, but we have asked the sponsor to be interested also in the development of the participants in each communities. And it was good, but only the top management, only the executive committee was not enough. So what we have developed is a new development leadership program where we have taken 20 top managers in different areas, but a level below. And we have trained them. It was a leadership program called Leading an Ecosystem. We have trained them to understand, to grow also in their self-awareness and to be aware about the potential of this community internally. And to achieve that, we have confronted these people with a startup, with really unusual actors outside of Airbus, so that they can really see the potential and that they realize how do they behave also personally toward these non-traditional actors. Because you have to know, in a large company, you have the tendency to behave a little bit like superior, because you think that you are a big one and then you know better than the smaller one. So, and in realizing that the necessity to exchange at eye level, also with a smaller company, that they had great ideas, that they had 25-year-old founder being really interesting, it was really in click in their mind. And they really shamed about themselves. Oh, how can we be perceived like that? And we need to change that. And through this exercise with external actors, where they had to look at eye level, then we confronted them with the internal communities. And you said, you know what? You even have these people within the company. These are the communities. So we developed then the links. And now we are continuing to work on that, and to continue to give them some inspiration and say, okay, connecting with, for some topic with some community, and encouraging them to continue to look in and outside, because the change cannot be driven only from inside, but through this connection, and also through a continuous development of themselves. So this is where we are, Karina. This is also my this is my last slide. Okay. Feel free to ask me a question.
We will open it up, and I know we already have lots of questions, so I'm glad we have a good. I think we have a good 15 minutes for Q&A. So let's see, we have several from the audience.
I can see the question.
There, so I'll feed them to you, and
yeah.
So
how many people we have after 2.5 years, more than 5,000 people being engaged in the communities.
Yeah.
And the size of the community depends on the project. It's from we try to encourage them not to be more than 10 people per community, due to the development part that we wanted them to have. Because if you are more than 10, it's difficult to work then in this environment where you also exchange about yourself.
And then you have a question around, there's a congratulations, and we were all very excited and inspired by your presentation, these wonderful examples. Antonio Kiza has a question on which methodologies and frameworks did Airbus adopt and to do so? So what were the key methodologies or frameworks that were involved in this change effort?
For the community, or for the development of the person?
To help employees find their passions.
To find the passions. Mm-hmm. So to find the passion, we have worked with external coach, and we have developed our own framework. So, and this is what I've shared on my slide. It was, I think, the number 10. So we had different boot camp. So we have first selected the people who wanted really to find out their passion. We have selected them. They had to do a video and then to share some ideas. So it was not based on any financial case or things like that. And then they were invited to a first boot camp, and the first boot camp they were working on the self-awareness and the relationship to others. And also on, we asked them the question, it was very interesting, what piss you off? It was one of the first questions that they really start to work on their values, and then the why, until they found out, okay, but what is really important for me in my life? And then there were a lot of coaching exercise in small groups. So there were really three very intensive days, only working on what are my values, who I am, and what is my passion. And then in the second bootcamp, it was 8 weeks later, it was working on now, how do I transpose my passion and my idea in a concrete project within this organization? How can I do the match? And who could support me in this journey? Who are the other one maybe there or in the rest of the company or outside of the company who could support me in that journey?
Wonderful. I have another question. I'm not sure if you answered that previously. Quite in terms of Airbus has various locations, how do you integrate the strategy from different locations?
There are different, yeah, there are different locations, but there is an overall strategy. So there is I would say, just strategy which is not depending on the location or the countries, and there are overall strategic, I would say, fields, and we took the large picture, I would say. We do not have a local specific business at Airbus.
Okay. I have a question for Finn, and hello, Dr. Finn. Good point on the importance of creating a winning culture. It's interesting to note that culture is not typically part of the business model. So should we consider culture as a key element of the business model itself? This is from Antonio Tito.
Culture is very often not a part of the business model because it's kind of intangible. But I think it was Peter Senge who said that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And that is because that culture is so important for us, and it's the underlying foundation we have for actually doing what we are doing. Some people define culture as how you do things when nobody is watching. And that is what we need in a fast-changing world, a complex world. We can't have rules for everything. We can't have procedures for everything. We need to create a backbone of trust. So people, when they're innovating, whenever we're innovating, we are taking risks. So when we are taking risks, we need to feel safe, because otherwise we will not take the risks. So we go with the safe things. If you're not feeling comfortable, if you're not feeling that we can take the risk, we are usually just pursuing a safe path, despite we know that it is a wrong path. So people who are comfortable with change, comfortable with taking risk, they are taking risk because they have a culture that allows them to do it, that they will not be punished for taking risk. They will be rewarded when they succeed. And when they don't succeed, they will just say, okay, try again. It is like with our kids, when we wanted to teach them to ride a bike. First time they tumbled riding a bike, we don't say to them, oh, you tumbled, never ride a bike again. We tell them, up on the bike again, try again, and try again, and try again, and you will eventually succeed. We need to have the same mindset in organizations when we're innovating. Instead of focusing on having fault-free organization, of not making mistakes, we need to have cultures where it is allowed to make mistakes, because it's only through mistakes that we can create breakthroughs.
Great. We have a question around remote team management, which is very common these days. We're all so digitally connected and virtual. The question would be around, how do you ensure this vibrant or engaging culture when teams have to connect remotely and they may not be coming into headquarters, they may not be there physically?
Who are you asking?
You want? I think I'll start with Elvire to see what your experience is at Airbus, and we'll see if you have additional comments, Finn. Yeah.
I think, remotely is for sure challenging. So what we try to organize is that at least the people from time to time could really meet physically together. And this was part of the sponsoring, that they could really have the possibility to meet at least once physically, and then to continue remotely to work together, as you do in your usual job, I will say.
Did you have any additional comments on that, Finn?
Well, I'm just thinking about, I'm always trying to encourage my clients to think outside the box. Who is actually good at motivating people remotely? And the best example I can come up with are terror organizations, that they have created a culture that they are really good at motivating people, even for long distance. I just recently read a book about how they can find the right people that they can turn into suicide murders and motivate them remotely. So actually, I think the same principles for good purpose are the principles that we could adopt in creating remote distributed teams that are highly motivated on the same purpose.
A question for Elvire. Fascinated by this notion of building communities, starting from the local level, and looking at grassroots approach, really, is what you were describing,
Yes.
and looking at how you link that to the top level executives. What do you think was most critical for ensuring that connection, the strong connection between local and top management?
I would say the most critical, I mean, the easiest part is the interest in the project that they are going to drive. And the most critical is to ensure that they are not only interested in the project, because actually it's not the most important for the organization at the end of the day. It's also their development and the recognition. And here, sometimes what was really challenging is that they look too much at the project and say, but we already have this kind of similar initiative, or we already had this kind of ideas. So, and our job was really to say, yes, but it's now a different approach, it's a different perspective, and these people are going to drive that beyond their jobs, and they may also find new ideas. So to really open all the doors, sometimes for a topic where they would have thought, but we already have that. And at the end of the day, they don't have that, because if they would have had that, everybody would have known it. And then also to make them also accepted the top management that the people who were working on the project, it was also about their development. So they had really to give funding for their development, and not only to the fact that they were developing a project.
Great. We have more questions coming in, and this is from Nitin. Innovation needs improvement and investment in development of people beyond the technical skills. So which skills do you think are highly relevant that people must focus on in order to be an active participant in this cultural innovation of the organization? Quite a it's a long one, but an interesting question.
Yeah. So I think beyond the hard skills, because at a certain time in this large organization, all people who have been recruited have a very high level of intelligence, idea, and creativity, but it's much more about the openness to re-question the status quo, and the openness also to look at themselves on how to embark others. So it's not about telling, I have an idea and I'm going to position myself with this idea. It's about, I have an idea and I want to inspire others. So it was really about developing this ability to inspire, to keep in check their egos, and to create something new together with the community. So it's very much about this emotional intelligence, having a very strong empathy, openness, humility, and an ability to embark others. Because otherwise, the change is only you alone. And if you want to have this overall movement, we need this participant having this capability.
Great, thank you. Any thoughts there, Finn? Any thoughts, additional thoughts? No, okay. No? All right, we'll move on. There's one more question, then I have, there's a question for both of you. This is an interesting one for Elvire. To what extent is culture considered by Airbus as a competitive factor against Boeing? So, it's a loaded question.
I think that, but yeah, Finn, you are the more neutral person, I will say, to answer this question. But I think that each company is really trying to have the culture have this booster, of course. And if one is better than the other one, I wouldn't pretend it. It's different. There is a different history, the different background, different experiences. But I give you the word, Finn.
Okay, thank you very much. We have actually compared Airbus and Boeing over times, several times actually. But I think one of the greatest advantages of Airbus is the cultural diversity that Airbus has. If you look at the Concorde could never have been developed in a monocultural environment. Only the French can think of at that time having a passenger jet flying 2 times the speed of the sound. But the French would never be able to build it alone. They could only do it together with the British. Later, when Airbus was created, coming up with the biggest airliner ever, the Airbus A380. Only the French can think of doing that, but they could never do it alone. Only together with the British, the Spanish, and the Germans, it could be possible to build it. So bringing that cultural diversity together, having different perspectives, bringing in different skills, is what sets Airbus ahead of Boeing. Also in terms of international business development, there have been two very different approaches from Boeing and Airbus. Airbus have always pursued the idea about having strategic partnerships with China, for instance, where Boeing was very late in coming into that game, where they said, oh, we just want to sell planes to China. We don't want to have a factory there. We don't want to have technology exchange with China. Where at that time, where Airbus established the relationships with China, the French president, I think it was Sarkozy at that time, went to China and created the bonds on a high level political level that grounded the future for Airbus in China. That's why, and Boeing is a public listed company where the key focus is creating returns for the investors. Of course, Airbus has to create a return as well, but not on the cost of safety. And that is why Boeing is bleeding right now, because they've made a lot of shortcuts in order to satisfy the short-term needs from the investors. And I think that's basically a fundamental difference between North Americans, Americans in general, and Europeans, that there are different value systems that come into play.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Finn. We are nearing the end of our session, so I wanted to ensure we have time for one quick question for Elvire. This is from Christopher Weber-Fürst. Hope I said that right. Lovely question. He asked, Elvire, I think we need to accelerate leading from the emerging female future to create this kind of culture. Comment.
I fully agree. I fully agree that diversity for sure is also starting with gender diversity, where there's still a long way to go. Actually, one of the community we have pushed from the beginning is a female community. So where we have really brought a lot of women together, and they have developed projects, and they had a development journey where we get even more sponsoring from the top management. And Christophe is part of one of the coach and trainer who's supporting us in this journey. So Christophe, nice to have you here.
Special role. Wonderful.
So I fully agree with you.
That's great. Well, we're almost at close. Just in closing, and I have a reminder and a message for everyone. But before we go there, one last message from both of you. What do you feel is one message we need to remember to sustain global innovation cultures in 2020 and beyond? One message we need to think about. Could be a word or a message.
Well, for mine, it's just about diversity. Include as many different people as possible in the innovation in the innovation process, especially those people who you usually consider a pain in the neck.
Mm. Yeah. For me, it's really bringing a balance between humanity and innovation, because I really worked a very long time in the technological department, and innovation is driven by human. It's about a human process. So it's really keeping in mind that it's all about the human being and the development of this human being in a more conscious way.
Very nice. Thank you again to both of you for your insights and for this wonderful presentation. Thanks to my colleague Finn for sharing your insights, and Elvire for a wonderful case study and our inspirations on building a global innovation culture. And before we go, I wanted to quickly bring to the attention of the audience that we look forward to co-creating with you. Sorry, there we go. We look forward to co-creating with you in the future and looking at solutions around global innovation culture and beyond. And you can contact us here, and you have the contact information and more resources. And we want to remind you, we've got one more session left. Next Thursday, June 25th, your final stop on the readiness journey. And I will be speaking and hosting the session with the guest speaker, Brian Senpuli, Global Innovation and Market Leader, who brings extensive experience in leading global innovation around the world. And so we'll be presenting on empowering global innovation readiness. So the final piece will bring you from concept to execution. You have info and registration at the link there. And I want to thank everyone for your questions, your comments, your feedback, and a big thank you and merci. Stay safe and enjoy your readiness journey. Thank you.
Thanks, Karina. Bye-bye.